Victor Monroe thought he had everything perfectly under control until one single moment upended his well-ordered world. What he witnessed that day left him completely speechless, yet the secret behind it would change everything. Stick around until the end to find out the unbelievable twist, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Victor moved through the spacious halls of his mansion with the same robotic precision that had defined every part of his life. Every day was planned down to the minute. His business empire ran like clockwork, and his home operated with military-like efficiency. There was simply no room for surprises. That is why, when he passed by the large glass windows that overlooked the garden, what he saw made him freeze in his tracks. His 12-year-old son, Ethan, was dancing, and he wasn't alone. Alongside him was Olivia Cruz, the house cook, woman. He barely gave a second thought, ever since she was hired half a year ago. The scene was so unexpected that Victor blinked several times. Sure, his eyes were deceiving him, yet there they were, moving gracefully across the lawn in perfect unison. Ethan's movements were tentative and clumsy, yet they carried an unusual focus. He stumbled more than once, but instead of getting upset, he broke into a carefree laugh, a laugh so genuine that Victor hadn't heard it in years. Since the passing of his wife, Ethan had become withdrawn, always lost in his own thoughts, and now here he was, smiling because of her. Olivia moved with a surprising grace that Victor had never associated with a cook. Every step was measured and deliberate, not random or playful, but the result of a disciplined training in movement. She wasn't merely entertaining a child's fancy. She was showing him the ropes, teaching him the art of dance. A chill of discomfort crept through Victor as he realized he didn't appreciate someone else, especially an employee, having such a strong influence on his son. The more he watched, the more irritated he became. With rigid determination, he stepped outside, his footfalls echoing sharply on the stone pathway. As he neared, both Olivia and Ethan noticed him. The boy's earlier joy instantly turned to apprehension, while Olivia calmly wiped her hands on her apron and straightened to meet Victor's steady gaze. "What's going on here?" Victor asked coolly. Ethan dropped his eyes, but Olivia looked him straight in the face. "We were practicing," she replied simply. "Practicing what?" Victor pressed. "Learning to dance, isn't it?" Shifting his focus to Ethan, he asked, "Since when?" The boy shuffled his feet and admitted quietly that it had been happening for a while, sending a pang of guilt through Victor. He had never asked or even noticed until now. "And why didn't you mention it?" Ethan just shrugged slightly. Before he could say more, Olivia interjected, "Because he had no one to practice with." Victor's eyes narrowed at her tone, firm, resolute, and a little infuriating. "This isn't your job," he declared. "No, it isn't," Olivia agreed. "Then why are you doing it?" she countered, folding her arms with an unreadable expression. "Because he asked me to," she explained. Victor then turned back to Ethan. "Is that so?" Ethan nodded slowly. A heavy silence fell between them. Victor exhaled deeply, irritation mingling with an inexplicable feeling that something was off, like there was an unseen layer he just couldn't grasp, and that was simply unacceptable. Shifting his gaze back to Olivia, he said, "I need to talk to you alone." Ethan's worried eyes darted between them, but Olivia remained composed. "As you wish," she said, and Victor strode back into the house without waiting for her to follow. Over his shoulder, he caught Ethan leaning in close to Olivia, whispering something that made her smile conspiratorially. A shiver of uncertainty ran down Victor's spine. He was convinced there was more to this than met the eye. Later, Victor sat in his office with his fingers clasped under his chin, staring at his computer screen as he reviewed some seemingly routine information. Olivia Cruz, age 29, had been hired as the cook in his mansion 6 months ago. There was no criminal record, no red flags, nothing unusual at all. By all appearances, she was exactly what she appeared to be, a reliable house employee who did her job and stayed out of trouble. Yet Victor couldn't shake the feeling that there was something hidden beneath her calm exterior. His instincts, which had always served him well in business, were now screaming that Olivia wasn't just a cook. He decided to do a broader search using her name and a keyword that had been nagging at him ever since he saw her dance. Olivia, cruise dancer. At first, nothing stood out, but then buried among various articles and irrelevant links, he discovered a news story from 7 years ago. Victor leaned in, reading the headline that announced, "A young ballet prodigy disappearing." From the stage, without explanation. His pulse quickened as he clicked on the link, and soon a photograph of a much younger Olivia filled the screen, dressed in a spotless white ballet costume on a grand stage, with her arms raised in flawless form and an expression of serene confidence. She was nothing like the quiet cook in his kitchen. The article described her as a rising star in the world of ballet, a dancer with extraordinary talent who had performed in renowned theaters and was on the brink of an international career. Then, without scandal or public drama, she had suddenly vanished from the spotlight. No interviews, no statements, just gone. Victor sank back in his chair, exhaling sharply. Why would someone with that level of talent throw away their future, he wondered. And how did she end up here, working? In my kitchen? With questions piling up, he realized he wouldn't find answers by staring at a screen any longer. He needed to hear the truth straight from her. Standing up abruptly, he left his office and headed for the kitchen. There, as he expected, Olivia was busy cleaning the countertops with methodical precision. She looked up as he entered, her face neutral, yet guarded. "Mr. Monroe," she greeted politely, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Do you need something?" Without wasting time, Victor pulled out his phone and set it on the counter, displaying the article about her. "Care to explain this?" he asked. For the first time since he had met her, genuine surprise flickered across her face, brief but unmistakable. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced from the screen to him. "So, you've been looking into me," she said calmly, though there was a careful undertone in her voice. Victor crossed his arms. "I don't appreciate mysteries in my own home." Olivia exhaled slowly, placing the dish towel aside for a moment. He thought she might refuse to comment, but after a long pause, she finally said, "I suppose I should have expected this. You're not the type of man to leave things unanswered." Victor stayed silent, waiting. She looked at the article once more, her fingertips grazing the edge of the counter. "I used to be a dancer," she admitted softly. "A long time ago." Victor replied, "You were more than just a dancer. You were a star." A bitter smile crossed her face, as if mourning a star that had burned out too soon. Victor studied her carefully. "Why did you walk away?" She hesitated, and Victor could see the internal conflict in her eyes as she deliberated whether to reveal the truth. Finally, she sighed. "Because I lost everything." Her voice dropped, sounding more vulnerable than he'd ever heard before. She continued, "When I was 22, dancing was my whole world. It was all I knew and cared about. I pushed myself beyond limits, convinced I was destined for something extraordinary." She paused and then added, "And I wasn't alone in that dream." Victor frowned. "Who was with you?" "Your fiancé, perhaps," she replied in an almost whispered tone. "Marcus," she confirmed. "He was a dancer too. We trained together. Since childhood. We were meant to conquer the world together. We even got an offer for an international tour, a dream we'd chased our entire lives." Something in her tone made Victor's stomach twist. He already sensed where this was headed. "The day before our biggest performance, Marcus was hit by a car," she continued, her eyes growing distant as she recalled the memory. "He died. Instantly." Victor remained silent as the weight of her words settled heavily between them. "After that, I couldn't dance anymore," she said quietly. I couldn't even listen to music without feeling like a piece of me was gone. Everything I had built my life around just disappeared, and so I vanished from the scene. Victor let her words sink in. He had expected some tragedy, but not this. A sorrow so raw it had forced her to abandon her identity completely. "So, you became a cook?" he asked gently. Olivia let out a small, wry laugh, though it wasn't truly humorous. "I needed something completely different from dance. Something practical. Something safe." Victor exhaled, rubbing his face with his hand. Meeting his gaze, Olivia's expression turned unreadable. "Now I teach your son," she stated. Those words hit him harder than he anticipated. He knew she wasn't trying to start a challenge, but it felt like one. Despite leaving dance behind, she had decided to share it with Ethan. "Why? What made you break your own rule for him?" Victor asked slowly. "You could have easily ignored it," he added. Olivia paused, then replied, "Because he reminds me of who I was at his age." Victor stiffened at her words. He noticed how her expression softened as she spoke of him, and it struck him like a blow. His son had been withdrawing ever since his mother passed away, hiding behind books and rigid routines. He always believed that providing Ethan with stability and security was enough, but Olivia had seen something he had missed. "He smiles when he dances," she added, "and I believe he just needed someone to really listen to him." Turning away for a moment, Victor realized that he had spent years making sure Ethan had everything he needed, except perhaps that one essential thing. After a long pause, he asked, "So what are you planning to do about it?" Olivia tilted her head and replied, "You mean, are you expecting me to force him to dance like it's the solution to everything?" Shaking her head, she continued, "No, I just want him to feel something again. The rest is up to him." Victor mulled over her words, realizing that he had always prided himself on knowing every detail in his home, yet he had been blind to his son's true happiness. Finally, he said in a softer tone, "I don't like others meddling in my family." Olivia didn't flinch. "And I don't like seeing children forget how to be kids," she added firmly. A heavy silence filled the room as Victor internally acknowledged that she was right. In the grand dining room, Ethan stood in front of his father, his small fists clenched as he gathered the courage to speak. The soft light from the chandeliers bathed the long table, yet the tension was palpable. Victor sat at the head of the table with an unreadable expression, watching as Ethan shifted nervously from one foot to the other. At last, Ethan took a deep breath and said, "I want to compete in a dance contest." The room fell silent. Victor deliberately set his silverware down and repeated, "A dance contest?" as if testing the words. Ethan nodded firmly. "Yes, I want to compete." Victor leaned back in his chair and asked, "When did you decide this?" After a brief pause, Ethan admitted, "A little while ago. I've been training with Olivia, and she thinks I'm ready." At the mention of Olivia, Victor's eyes flashed with emotions he couldn't easily read, yet Ethan remained unwavering. "Yes, and I believe I am too." Victor looked deeply at his son and saw a spark in him, a determination that was much more than childish excitement. Still, his concern lingered. "Remember, this isn't just a game. Competitions demand discipline, pressure, and high expectations," he warned. Ethan straightened his back. "I understand, and I'm ready for that." After a long moment of silence, Victor finally said, "All right, but if you're going to do this, you must do it right. No half measures. You have to commit fully." Ethan's face lit up with a wide, genuine smile that caught Victor off guard. "Thank you, Dad," he said. That evening, Victor found Olivia in the kitchen, carefully chopping vegetables with the kind of precision that comes from years of habit. She looked up as he entered, already sensing why he was there. "I knew this question would come," Victor remarked, crossing his arms. Olivia wiped her hands on a towel and turned to face him. "I figured you'd wonder if he's ready," she said softly. Tilting her head, she continued, "He has passion and drive. The discipline will come with time." Victor exhaled slowly, his fingers drumming on the counter. If he goes down this road, he's going to face failure and rejection.
He might not be able to handle that. Olivia studied him for a moment before replying, "Or maybe you're the one who isn't ready to handle it."
Victor's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he said, "If we're going to do this, we do it the right way. That means you'll train him properly. No gentle nudges. He needs to be pushed." A slight curl formed on Olivia's lips as she replied, "I wasn't planning on taking it easy on him." The next morning, training officially began. Victor watched from a distance as Olivia transformed from the soft-spoken cook into a strict, focused mentor. Ethan went through his exercises with clear determination, his forehead soon glistening with sweat as Olivia corrected his posture, his foot placement, and his rhythm repeatedly. Her tone was firm, yet never harsh, as she called out, "You missed the beat." Ethan quickly wiped his brow and tried again. Victor, peeking through the doorway, couldn't help but notice how much his son had changed. Once shy and hesitant, always following instructions rather than taking charge, Ethan now had a stubborn edge, a refusal to give up, even when things didn't come naturally. Hours passed, and by the end of the session, Ethan collapsed on the floor, panting heavily. Olivia handed him a bottle of water, which he accepted gratefully. "You did really well today," she said simply. Ethan grinned up at her, replying, "That means a lot coming from you." Victor remained silent, observing their interaction with an unsettling mix of admiration and concern. As the contest neared, the training intensified. Ethan pushed himself harder, practicing late into the evenings and repeating his routines over and over. What once was playful excitement about dancing had turned into serious determination. Despite his initial hesitations, Victor found himself drawn to every training session, watching his son evolve. One evening, after an especially tough session, Ethan sat at the dining table, barely touching his dinner. Noticing the way his leg bounced nervously under the table, Victor asked in a gentler tone, "What's on your mind?" After a moment of hesitation, Ethan admitted, "There's another dancer in the contest. His name is Diego Ramirez. He's won for 2 consecutive years." Victor nodded slowly as Ethan continued, "Diego messaged me saying I don't stand a chance." Clenching his glass a bit tighter, Victor asked, "And what do you think about that?" Ethan hesitated, and then said, "I don't know." Leaning in, Victor advised, "Listen, Ethan, people only try to bring you down if they see you as a threat. If Diego is reaching out to you, it means he's already worried." Ethan's eyes widened slightly as his posture shifted. "You really think so?" he asked. Victor nodded. "I do." For the first time during their conversation, Ethan broke into a small, genuine smile. "Then I guess I'll just have to prove him wrong," he declared. Victor exhaled, watching his son with a mix of pride and concern. The boy who once hid behind books and strict routines was now becoming something stronger. And for the first time, Victor found himself eagerly anticipating what his son might become. The theater buzzed with excitement as dancers warmed up backstage, stretching, practicing their steps, and mentally preparing for their performance. The air was filled with the soft strains of music, murmurs from coaches, and the steady hum of nervous breathing. Ethan stood among them, adjusting the straps on his dance shoes with slightly trembling hands. Victor, just a few feet away, watched with an expression he couldn't quite read. He had always been a man who thrived on control, but today he felt completely powerless as his son stepped onto the stage alone. Next to Ethan, Olivia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Just breathe," she said calmly. Ethan exhaled, slowly, and nodded. "I've done the work. Now all that's left is to dance." Victor observed them from afar, feeling like an outsider as he saw the ease between them. Olivia had given Ethan something he hadn't found before, a confidence that came from passion, not just expectations. He clenched his jaw, trying to push aside the unsettling feeling. The announcer's voice filled the room as he called out, "Next, please welcome Ethan Monroe to the stage." Ethan swallowed hard and turned toward Victor, as if searching for reassurance, approval, or perhaps even permission. Victor offered a single nod. "Go on," he said firmly. Ethan stepped into the spotlight as the stage lights blinded him, and the silence of the audience pressed in like a heavy weight. Standing at the center, his heartbeat pounded in his ears, and for a moment he doubted himself. What if he failed? What if he forgot the steps? What if Diego was right? Then he noticed his father sitting in the front row, clapping with an intensity Ethan had never seen before. There was no judgment in Victor's expression, no demand for perfection, just steady, real support. Next to him, Olivia gave a small, encouraging nod. As the music started, Ethan let his body move naturally before his mind could overthink. His first step was exact, the next even smoother as he surrendered to the rhythm, each move blending into the next. Soon, the stage became his entire world, the pressure melting away. He wasn't there to win, he was there to dance. The final move, a challenging spin and leap he had struggled with for weeks, arrived. He gathered himself, pushed off the floor, and for a brief second, time seemed to slow down. Then he landed lightly, steady on his feet. The music stopped, a moment of silence followed, and then the applause exploded. Ethan stood there, chest rising and falling, sweat glistening on his skin as he scanned the audience. Victor was clapping, and Olivia's eyes shone with pride. Soon after, the results were announced. The winner of this year's contest was Diego Ramirez. The crowd cheered as Diego stepped forward with a confident smirk. Ethan swallowed hard, keeping his face neutral despite his loss. But before he could fully process his disappointment, the announcer continued. "We are also awarding a special prize for artistic expression, recognizing not just technical skill, but also passion, connection, and heart. This award goes to Ethan Monroe." The audience erupted in cheers once more. Ethan blinked in surprise as his name echoed in the theater. He stepped forward and accepted the medal that was placed around his neck. It wasn't the first place trophy, but when he looked at his father, he knew everything was all right. Later, while removing his dance shoes in the dressing room, Diego approached him. "Not bad," he commented, twirling his own trophy. "You might actually have a chance." "Next year," Ethan offered a small smile. "Next year, I'm going to win," he declared confidently. Diego smirked and replied, "We'll see about that." Outside the theater, Victor and Olivia waited. When Ethan finally emerged, Victor placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and asked, "How do you feel?" After a brief pause, Ethan answered, "Proud." Victor nodded and said, "That's good," as they walked toward the car. Ethan glanced down at the medal in his hand. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about proving to himself that he belonged on that stage, that he was capable, and that next time he'd be even better. Watching his son, Victor saw something new, a strength that he had never seen before. For the first time in a long time, he felt not only pride but also something much deeper. Victor had spent so many years obsessed with control and perfection that he had forgotten what truly mattered. Not the outcome, but the journey. Ethan looked up and asked, "Can I keep training?" Victor smiled, a rare, genuine smile, and replied, "Of course, we're just getting started." He never imagined that one single moment could change everything, but now nothing would ever be the same again. What would you have done if you were in his place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more.